My name is Camille Stratton, and the last time I let someone call me trash in front of a room full of people, I was standing under a chandelier that cost more than my first year of grad school. The champagne hadn't even gone flat when it happened. I was near the bar alone, naturally watching my sister toast a $990 million Series C deal with Stratworth Capital. She looked radiant in her white silk jumpsuit, toasting flutes with her fiancé, Miles Beck, like she was the queen of something she hadn't built. The room glittered, the kind of glitter that came from patent lawyers, lifestyle influencers, biotech bloggers. Lena always did know how to curate a crowd. She raised her glass again. To the dream, she said. To the future of Regeneralink. Someone nearby clapped too hard. The crowd followed like trained seals, and then it came. Miles, drunk on either champagne or power, clinked his glass and stepped forward. And to the family, he grinned, scanning the room. Because not everyone was cut out for visionary work, right? His voice dripped with mock sincerity. Some folks are better suited for service. Laughter, polite at first, rippled outward. Then he pointed. Directly at me. Camille, could you help with the appetizers? They're a bit short-staffed tonight. Silence. Just for a second. Just long enough for everyone to register what he'd said. Then a second wave of laughter, louder this time, because now they knew it was safe to laugh at me. Lena didn't stop him. She didn't even blink. She sipped her wine and smiled like it had been rehearsed. My father looked at the floor. My mother adjusted her bracelet and turned away as if I were just another server in a dark dress. I didn't speak. I didn't argue. I walked past the white linen tables, past the bouquets of calla lilies and synthetic-smelling vanilla candles. I walked past the photographers and the startup CEOs who wouldn't remember my name tomorrow. I walked straight to the edge of the stage, pulled out my phone, and dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang once. Hi. It's Camille Stratton, I said. Cancel the deal. And then I ended the call. Silence. Real this time. Not the curated kind. Not the polite silence of obligation. But silence that hit like a stone through stained glass. Somewhere near the ice sculpture, someone whispered, She can't mean that deal. Another voice. Wait. She had signing authority. I could feel the air shift. No screaming, no slaps, no threats, just one sentence. And suddenly, everyone in that room had to recalculate everything they thought they knew about me. They thought I was invisible. They forgot that I was the one who built the thing they were drinking to. And now I was done being quiet. 12 years earlier, I was crouched on the cold cement floor of a converted garage in the foothills of northern Oregon, soldering a circuit board with a borrowed iron and caffeine for blood. That was where Regeneralink was born. Not in a boardroom, not in front of a pitch deck, but in a garage with a buzzing fluorescent light, and a girl who still believed ideas could save the world. That girl was me. Back then, I was working full-time in regulatory compliance for a regional medical lab. Nights were for prototypes mapping neural response markers, sketching feedback loops, testing error tolerances on processors that weren't meant to handle the kind of data I was pushing through them. My clothes smelled like solder and black coffee. My fingers had permanent burns. Lena wasn't there in the beginning. She arrived later, heels in hand, still wearing makeup from whatever launch party she'd attended. She walked in, looked around the cluttered space, and tilted her head. You're still doing this, she asked. I nodded. Phase 3's almost stable. She leaned against the table. You know, if you ever want someone to help translate this for people who write checks, call me. At the time, it sounded like support. Like maybe my older sister finally saw what I was building. We started working together, not coding, not engineering, but side by side. I stayed in the garage, troubleshooting logic chains. She drafted brand decks and snapped photos for potential investors. She told me once, You're the genius behind the curtain. I'm just the voice. It felt like a partnership, until it wasn't. The first investor meeting was held in a loft office in Seattle. I wore a secondhand blazer. She wore crimson lipstick and confidence-like armor. I hadn't even seen the presentation slides until the screen lit up. Lena Stratton, founder visionary. Slide after slide of her speaking her ideas, her branding. My diagrams were relabeled with soft pastel marketing overlays. My name was nowhere. During the coffee break, I pulled her aside. "Where's my name?" I whispered. She smiled too big, too bright. "It's cleaner this way. You hate public speaking, remember?" I nodded. I swallowed. I went back inside. That was the first time I let myself disappear. It wouldn't be the last. Because when you love something enough, you'll excuse anything to protect it, even becoming invisible, even being erased. And for years, I let it happen. Every headline, every article, every LinkedIn post, Lena Stratton changing the face of neural biotech, while I worked behind that face, silent, exacting, unseen. Until the day I wasn't invited to my own board meeting. And even then, I still stayed quiet. But silence doesn't mean surrender. Sometimes silence is just a blade waiting for the right moment to cut. It was a Monday morning, rain-slicked pavement, lukewarm coffee, and nerves that hadn't quite settled since the night before. I'd stayed up reviewing logistics models for our Q3 expansion. Vendor integrations, FDA compliance audits, throughput simulations. The kind of work no one ever clapped for, but the kind that held companies together. I arrived early to the executive floor. The security scanner blinked red when I tapped my card. I tried again. Red. No beep. No welcome. Just rejection. The guard at the front desk shifted awkwardly. "Sorry, Miss Stratton," he said. "You've been removed from the access list." I blinked at him like I hadn't heard right. "What, there's a meeting?" I'm aware he said not meeting my eyes. "I was told not to let you through." My phone buzzed. An email had landed. Subject line advisory status, termination notice cold, clinical, no explanation, no call, just erasure. I stood there frozen. While behind the frosted glass doors, the board meeting continued without me. I could hear muffled voices, occasional laughter. Probably Lena charming the room in her signature navy. That was 3 years ago. The same week, TechVision ran a cover profile on her Lena Stratton, the brilliant mind behind Regeneralink. They used a photo I'd taken. Her leaning casually against a lab counter I built. I wasn't even mentioned. Not as a co-founder, not as a developer, not even as her sister. It was like I had never existed. I remember walking down the street that day still holding the flash drive with the Q3 revisions. I ended up in a cafe, ordered something I didn't taste, and sat there until the sun started setting behind the skyline. I kept telling myself it was a mistake, that Lena would explain, that the board had made some legal move I just didn't understand yet. But deep down, I knew. I knew what silence really looked like when wielded as strategy. I knew what it felt like to be scrubbed clean from your own legacy. Still, I didn't speak. Not publicly, not to the press. Not even to the tech journalists who emailed me weeks later asking, "Off record, were you really involved?" I just archived the messages and closed my laptop, because I thought staying silent meant I still had some kind of dignity left to preserve. Because I believed that maybe somehow they'd realize what they'd done. But they didn't. And silence doesn't earn you grace. Silence only makes erasure easier. And one morning, when I opened the federal patent database to check the renewal status of my algorithm, I saw it filed under Lena Stratton and Miles Beck. My name, gone. My invention, rebranded. My trust, annihilated. They hadn't just removed me from the building, they'd stolen the foundation beneath my feet. And I realized then, quiet doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for them to keep taking. It started with a post. A young woman, probably no older than 22, shared a photo on LinkedIn, her smiling in front of a slide deck with the Regeneralink logo behind her. "Excited to begin my internship under the legendary Lena Stratton," the caption read. I hovered over the photo longer than I should have. Her smile was the same one I wore 10 years ago, bright, naive, hopeful. The comments were full of fire emojis and empty congratulations, all except one, a screenshot. Valora's words during a closed company meeting. "If she can't take feedback, she's in the wrong industry. This place isn't for the soft." The intern's name was Emily. Her profile vanished 3 days later. And that was the crack. Not in the company, not in the brand, but in me. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking of Emily's face, of how many Emilys had walked into Regeneralink with light in their eyes and walked out dimmed. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every woman who'd ever been told she was too much or not enough in the exact same breath. Every girl who was handed silence instead of credit. I opened my storage closet and pulled out the oldest box I owned, labeled in Sharpie Garage Era, "Do Not Toss." Inside, buried beneath notebooks and receipts, was an old USB drive, a backup I hadn't touched since the early days. It still worked. I found emails with timestamps, photos of me sketching the original data maps on whiteboards, voice memos where I explained neural compression theory out loud so Lena could translate it for the camera. One audio file hit me like a slap. Lena's voice, "Camille's not scalable. We'll use her name through Series A. After that, she gets in the way." There was laughter. I didn't recognize the other voices, but I didn't need to. I saved the files, all of them. And for the first time in 3 years, I picked up my phone, not to send an apology, not to swallow another insult, but to call Ezra Monroe. He'd been the only engineer who ever asked me how I slept, who brought me tea instead of expectations, who once said, "If you ever need anything, I owe you." He picked up on the first ring. "Camille," he said, surprised. "I still have your number saved." My throat closed for half a beat. Then I said, "Ezra, I found something, and I think it's time we both stop pretending we didn't know what she was doing." He didn't ask who I meant. He just exhaled and said, "Okay, tell me everything," and I did. Ezra was quieter than I remembered, older maybe, or just worn down like the rest of us. He worked for Stratworth Capital, now the very firm Lena was pitching our Series C deal to. "I flagged the pitch deck last week," he said. Something didn't smell right. The code she demoed. It wasn't the version their legal team has on file. It was yours. I didn't speak at first. Just let that sink in. She hadn't just stolen credit. She'd pitched my work, my structure, my neural load constraints and compression patterns. The system I spent 2 years building in a garage while she was out shopping for investors and sound bites. "Do you still have access to the IP chain?" I asked. "I do," Ezra said. "And if what you're telling me is true, if you never signed any NDA after you left, there's a legal gap." "I didn't," I said. "They tried, through a third-party firm, but I never clicked, never agreed. I still have the unread emails." He let out a long breath. "Then we've got a window. How long? 3, maybe 4 days. Stratworth won't pull out yet, but if we file an internal IP dispute and include authorship proof, they'll have to pause the fund release. Especially at this size. That's all I needed." By noon the next day, my living room looked like a war room. Coffee gone cold, Post-its everywhere. My old drives humming softly as they unpacked years of data. I found everything. Screenshots of early builds, Git commits with timestamps, debug logs in my handwriting, notes written in the margins of a lab manual Lena never read, photos of whiteboards with my equations circled in red, voice memos from the week we hit neural stability. I compiled a dossier, 53 pages, no threats, no spin, just code dates, emails, photos, truth. Ezra set up the internal review. Stratworth's legal team, risk counsel, 1 senior partner. "You don't have to speak," he said, "just be present." I wore a slate gray sweater. No makeup, no need to prove I could play their game. Ezra opened the meeting. "This is Camille Stratton, co-creator of the core technology, filed under the Lena Stratton contract. She will remain silent. Documentation has been submitted for internal evaluation." One by one, the files clicked open on the shared screen. No one spoke for a long time. Then one counsel said if she owns part of the IP and didn't sign off. A pause, a rustle of paper. "Pause the fund release. Full review pending." Ezra nodded. Understood. The call ended. I sat there still, not shaking, not triumphant, just steady, for the first time in years. The deal wasn't dead, but it was bleeding, and Lena had no idea where the wound even was. It didn't take long for the silence to rupture. 2 days later, I was pouring coffee in my kitchen when my phone began vibrating with an urgency that felt mechanical. Emails, alerts, news, pings, LinkedIn tags all flooding in at once like a siren I couldn't shut off. I opened the first headline. Disgraced former founder sources question a Camille Stratton's involvement in Regeneralink. The next was worse. Insiders say she was just Lena's assistant. I didn't have to scroll far to know exactly what Lena was doing. She wasn't rebutting. She was rewriting, smearing. She didn't go to court. She went to the algorithm. Anonymous tips to gossip blogs, podcast snippets dissecting my mental health during the early years. Threads from sources close to the board calling me unstable, ungrateful, jealous. Even my LinkedIn profile got flagged. Endorsements disappeared. People I hadn't spoken to in years quietly unfollowed. Some reposted the stories without blinking. She wanted me small again, muzzled, manageable. Ezra called. "She's trying to poison the well," he said bluntly. "Yeah," I replied, staring at my untouched coffee. "And she thinks it'll work. She's betting on your silence." She always did. But this time, I had something she didn't. Audio. The file came from a name I hadn't seen in years. Malik Dorn Lena's fiancé. No subject line. Just a voice message. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play icon. Then I pressed. His voice was low, tired. "I stayed because I thought the deal would change things. But I can't keep watching her twist everything. You should hear this." Then came Lena's voice, clear, sharp, cruel. "Stratworth thinks Camille's the brain, please. She's just a placeholder. Once we close Series B, she'll be a footnote. A sad little one by Q3. I didn't cry. I just forwarded it. To Ezra, to Stratworth's legal, to 3 tech reporters I trusted. No statement, no commentary, just the file. And then I waited. That afternoon my name trended again, but not the way Lena planned. The co-founder they tried to erase. Audio leaks reveal internal sabotage at Regeneralink. Camille Stratton breaks the silence with receipts. I didn't answer my family's texts. Not when my father wrote, "We didn't know." Not when my mother added, "Please just talk to us." I deleted both. They'd watched me vanish once before. Smiled for holiday photos while I was being written out of history. I wasn't here for reconciliation. I was here to end the performance. And then her lawyer called. Private settlement. Off the record. A request to meet. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I gave them a time, a date, and an address. My new office. And one sentence to close the call. "Bring everyone. Let's make it a family moment." The meeting was set for 10 a.m. sharp. 2 weeks had passed since the audio leak. In that time, Regeneralink's Series C deal collapsed. Stratworth issued a compliance hold. 3 major investors pulled out within 48 hours. Lena's face, once a fixture on tech panels and wellness podcasts, quietly disappeared from public listings. But I wasn't watching headlines. I was rebuilding. The office I chose wasn't large, just a quiet space downtown, with matte slate walls, wide windows, and enough room for a small team. No flash, no spin. On the glass door, I installed one thing, a brass nameplate. Camille Stratton Founder. No tagline, no decoration, just the truth. When the elevator doors opened that morning, I stood by the window. The first one to step in was my mother, immaculate in a pale blue suit, her mouth tight. Then my father, who looked older than I, remembered, eyes flicking around like the room might judge him. And finally, Lena in gray. No lipstick, no heels, just a thin smile and a legal pad. They sat at the table. Her lawyer spoke first. Smooth voice, confident hands, a folder slid across the table. "We are prepared to offer a confidential settlement of $6.5 million, she said, as well as public acknowledgement of Ms. Stratton as co-founder of Regeneralink. In return, she agrees to cease all litigation and further media disclosures." I didn't reach for the folder. I just let the silence stretch. When I finally spoke, my voice was low, steady. "I want 3 things," I said. First, a public apology. Not a lawyer-crafted statement. I want it in her words, in her voice. On video. Lena flinched. Second, she withdraws from all active contracts with Stratworth. Effective immediately. My mother shifted. "Camille, is this really necessary? Think about your reputation." I looked at her, really looked, and then continued. "Third, I retain all rights to my share of the original codebase. The one I built. The one you renamed, but never rewrote." Lena laughed under her breath. "This is ridiculous!" I turned to her, calm as stone. "What's ridiculous is thinking hush money can buy back what you stole." My father leaned forward. "Please." We didn't know it had gone this far. I looked at him. "No," I said. "You didn't want to know. That's different." My mother's voice cracked. "You've made your point, haven't you?" I smiled, faint but final. This was never about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before all of you decided I didn't matter. Then I opened my bag, pulled out a velvet pouch. Inside was my old nameplate, brass-dented, scratched, the one they tossed out the night Lena took over. I laid it next to the new one on the table. I'm keeping both, I said quietly, to remember the difference between being erased and being reborn. None of them spoke after that. There was nothing left to say. The next morning, Stratworth issued one simple sentence. Camille Stratton is, and always was, co-founder and chief architect of the Regeneralink platform. That was all. No hashtags, no interviews. Just truth finally restored. Messages followed quiet ones, private ones. Women in labs, former interns, engineers who'd been written out of stories they helped build. They didn't want attention. They just wanted to say thank you for not staying silent. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every word. Weeks later, I opened a scholarship in my grandmother's name. For girls in STEM who've been told they're too much or not enough. For those who code in silence and lead without being seen. No press release. Just purpose. In my office now, beside the window, sit two nameplates. One old bent, once discarded. The other new, solid, anchored. Sometimes when the building is quiet, I sit alone and run my fingers across both. Not because I need to remember the pain, but because I survived it. Being erased didn't destroy me. It defined the line I would no longer let anyone cross. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won by showing up. And for the first time in years, when I saw my own name on the door, I didn't hesitate before walking through it. Because now I know exactly who I am.